Okay, get your reading guide. Let's do our prayer before study. Christ, my Lord, the giver of light and wisdom, who opened the eyes of the blind man and transformed the fishermen into wise heralds and teachers of the gospel through the coming of the Holy Spirit, shine also in my mind the light of the grace of the Holy Spirit. Grant me discernment, understanding, and wisdom in learning. Enable me to complete my assignments and to abound in every good work. For to you I give honor and glory. Amen. Most blessed Lord, send the grace of your Holy Spirit on me to strengthen me, that I may learn well the subject I am about to study, and by it become a better person, for your glory, the comfort of my family, and the benefit of your church and our nation. Amen. Very good. What I would like to do today is I'm just going to start with our writing and get it done, because then we can have just tons of time to talk about all these kings. And because we haven't really read enough of the Aeneid for boys and girls yet, I'm not going to give you a paper. I am going to give you a paper about it, but we need to read a little more. Something more needs to happen before I can really ask you a question that we're going to write about. So we're not doing anything about that today. We're going to go back and do an oldie but a goodie. We're going to do one of those papers where I give you a source and you write down what's interesting or important, right? Are you okay, Emma? It's all right. Whatever you did, I'm sure it's fine. Okay. And so I've got a source for you on Roman dining. Because who doesn't want to know what the Romans ate for dinner? I certainly want to know what the Romans ate for dinner.
You don't want to know.
And so, let us take a look at it. Now, I know we did several of these, but it's also been a while. So I'm just going to kind of go over the process again. We're not going to do the whole thing together, because I don't think you need me. But I'm going to remind you how it works, okay? So everybody gets one of these wonderful papers. You know, I have a Roman dining story. After we look at this, remind me. Somebody remind me of the Roman dining story. It's your job to be my external memory. Here, I will just give you 4. You can distribute, and I will give you guys 3. And we are missing Evelyn. This is why I have one. So I need to give this to her. So everybody find a blank page, an empty piece of paper, the back of questions in your reading guide, something empty. And I want you to do this on it. Hey guys, stop chatting. Can you guys see okay, you 3 at the table? 2, 3, 4. We'll put 5, and we'll put clincher. We could do 6 or 7 if we want, and then we'll put 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, clincher. I want you to write something that looks like that. And you are going to use this. Let me grab my tea and then get out of everybody's way. You're going to use that this week. This will be a really pretty easy assignment. The next week we can start a paper about Aeneas and his exploits. Okay, so remember that when we do a paper like this, we're writing nonfiction, right? We're not going to make stuff up, in other words. We can't just decide that the Romans loved cheesecake and just say that.
I think I actually did, though.
Without a source, we cannot say so. But I've given you a source, so this is fine. The first thing we have to do, and by the way, can somebody tell me how many paragraphs long this paper is going to be? 2. Thank you. Brilliant. Because we have 2. sections of our outline, okay? So we have a source, and we have, thankfully, on our source, many titles. Do you see titles of sections? So what are some things do you think we could write about if we want to? What do we seem to have information on? What? Well, with that, shh. Okay, one at a time.
Roman recipes?
I'm not done with Julia yet. Could we write a whole paragraph on stuff dates?
Well, you could. I would. About how to make them.
Well, look at the amount of information there.
Never mind.
That could be a little hard. What do you think, Emma?
Entertainment?
Entertainment. That's a big topic, right? So, okay, you do not have to write. Actually, write these things down. Off to the side, write entertainment. That's a good one. Okay, Christian, did you have one?
No,
It was you. It was
the menu.
the menu. Entertainment. Why did I put an E on the end of menu? I tell you, I have lost it today.
Fancier.
It is. It looks fancy. It has a U sound at the end.
I write my own language. I'll have it written like
What other? Is there anything else that seems to have plenty of information? What? Say it. Well, the whole thing is food and dining. So the whole paper is really about food and dining. So we have to narrow it down a little. Recipes.
You can add that easily to the menu.
We could add that. So here, let's do this. Recipes, and then here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go like that. We could join them, or we could do them separately if we think we have enough.
Dining essentials?
Dining essentials. What? Oh, it's not essentials, it's utensils. Yes. So that's a very fancy thing. What's a very short word that means dining utensils? Well, what's a shorter word than utensils? Well, dishes. I was thinking dishes, but silverware isn't technically dishes. I'm just going to write dishes because utensils, I'm too lazy to write utensils, dining utensils.
Dishes can also be food too. I'm lazy and I can write
It can.
easily.
It can. All right. Write utensils then if you want to be. And then, I don't know, we have the seating plan and the dinner party. Like, what is a dinner party like? I don't know. We could do dinner party. Yeah. And seating plan, which is on the back. So, because the seating plan is for a dinner party. Have you ever been to a fancy wedding reception or a dinner where it has name? Like there's names at the places?
I don't remember the chocolate stuff.
So in Roman dinner parties, there was a special place for everybody to sit. So that would be part of the dinner party. I'm sorry. No, I interrupted. Somebody was going to say something. Oh, was Amelia? It could be. It could be with music entertainment. So we can, in other words, we can condense some of these categories. If you start one, for example, I've decided, we're going to pretend. We already said this maybe is not a good idea. But like Julia said, I'm going to say, I'm going to do a paragraph on stuff dates. And so I write, don't write this, please. But I'm saying, okay, my first paragraph is on stuff dates. And then I write down 2 things about stuff dates and I run out of material. I think, crud.
I have 5 things for that.
Christian, no, just let me.
Detailed things.
I run out of material. What do? Well, I broaden the category. I turn stuff dates into menu, and I add a few more things. See, so if you start a category, I know, there wasn't as much as I thought, then blend it with another category that kind of goes together and make that your new topic. Does that make sense to everybody? So you're going to need to pick 2. You don't have to do all of these because we only have 2 paragraphs. Is this all ringing a bell?
Yep.
It's all, And then you're going to read the paper, and how are you going to decide what to choose to jot down? If it is this or this, if it is interesting or important or interesting. If you think it's something that really, really should be known, like anybody knowing anything about Roman food and dining must know this, then you should put it down. Or if you just think it's cool. If you don't think it's important and you don't think it's interesting, just skip it. It's your paper. You just skip it. Yes?
Do we have to write, have 5 different things?
No, well,
Do 3 or
well, the goal, thank you for the good question. 4 to 7. That's our goal. So you could have 4, you could have 5, you could have 6, you could have 7. If it gets more than 7, I mean, I'm not going to give your paper back to you and say, this is wrong because you had 8 things. I don't care. But generally, if we have that many, maybe it should have been 2 paragraphs, right? Because we're talking about a lot of things. What was your comment, Emma, or your question?
I don't need to ask about the parallelisms, but do we need to add similes, alliterations, and the like?
Yes, and we're going to add something. I think we're adding something new.
No.
No, you wanted to last time. You said it was too easy. Maybe it was too easy.
Yeah, that was before I had to write 4 different summaries of 4 different chapters.
Except I told you didn't because I forgot to give
But
the
I already
assignment.
started it.
I know. And if you would like to give it to me, I would love to read it.
I'm writing it right now.
Oh, but you don't have to.
But I'm going to.
I meant to give you all an assignment last week and I forgot.
So I'm just going to count that as an assignment you forgot to give me.
Yes, okay. That's like extra credit. I used to do extra things for the teacher. Okay, so we're going to pick 2 topics. So if my topic is menu, and suddenly my source starts talking about the couches that they sit on, does that belong in that paragraph? No, it does not. Only food items or the order of the food items would belong here. And then if I pick dishes/dining utensils, and they start talking about flute players, unless you eat with flute players, you should not include them in your dining utensils, okay? So your first sentence is the topic sentence, right? It says, Romans had some interesting food on the menu. Boom. And then you tell me all about it. And then for your clincher, you repeat or reflect. As you can see, the Romans ate some odd things. I didn't say the exact same words again. I just repeated or reflected.
I remember quite a few things, odd things Romans ate.
Yes. Yes, and don't forget, I've got a story, Roman dining story. So I will, because I will forget all of this. I'll get sidetracked. So what I want you guys to do is make an outline from that source with 2 sections, and then write 2 paragraphs for me, and bring it to me next week. That's it. And back to what Emma was asking, we are going to include, I didn't add a new thing. Actually, I didn't. It was the high schoolers that are getting a new thing. Give me a simile, alliteration, and our ing opener. Remember our dangling participles. We do not want to say something weird like serving the food, the shrimp were delicious. Because then the shrimp are serving your food. You can't say that. That would be disturbing, and I would probably leave the party. The shrimp. Listen to those Muppet shrimp. They're so cute. Yes. Luke. Are you sure?
Yeah.
All right. If you decide, lay it on me. Are there any questions? Does anybody want me to review simile, alliteration, or ing opener? Yes.
So you want an ing opener for both paragraphs?
No, unless you'd like to. Andrew Pudaba, IAW, makes you do one of these in every paragraph. I'm so beneficent and nice. I wish you well, and I'm so easygoing, and so put one of each in your paper. I would really appreciate it if you would mark it, but don't turn it a different color. Don't scribble in the middle of your paragraph. All you got to do is get a pencil, and in the side of your paper, put an S for simile, or write an A for alliteration, or write an ing in the margin of your paper. If you do it in the paper, then I'm searching. But if everybody would just put it on the side, I just grab the paper and I glance down the side and I see you did them. Right. Instantly. And I'm not hunting the whole time. This helps me a lot. Because if I have 18 of these to read, it helps me a lot to just be able to see, okay, you did it, great, I'm not searching for it. Are there any questions about that at all? Okay, so here's my story. And I believe they mention it on the sheet. Let me find it. Okay, on the side that has the people laying around the table, in the lower right-hand corner, it says Roman recipes. And in the middle paragraph, it says sauces were made with great care. The commonest, called liquamen or garum, was made from fish, salt, and herbs. Some people made it themselves, but it was so popular it could be bought ready-made. Okay, garum, fish sauce. First of all, I feel like if I say the words fish sauce, that already doesn't sound amazing to me. Yes.
About like the Greeks or the Spartans black broth.
Yes, like the black broth. But here's my story. This is a true story. Years ago now, I was watching some special on PBS, and they had excavated a Roman town, and they found jars of garum, fish sauce.
Oh.
And they analyzed it, and they tried to make it again. I'm going to figure out, how did the Romans make garum? And they made it. And involved sort of like burying it in the ground and letting it ferment and bringing it back up. You know what a fish smells like after it lays around for a while? Mm-hmm. So they brought it out, and if my memory serves correctly, they tried to eat it, but it was really gross, It was really gross. So, but, it's sort of a taste thing. There are people all over the world that eat very different things than we eat, right? And some things that we would think were really, really gross, but they think it's great because they grew up eating it, right? And so their taste was to eat this garum. Like when I go to Long John Silver's, I don't go very often because it kind of makes me feel sick after I eat it. But they have malt vinegar in a jar, and I just douse it. I love the malt vinegar, and it's just all over my fish. And then some people are just, oh my gosh, what are you eating? Like, I'm eating more malt vinegar. So it's kind of what you grow up with eating. But I had a dinner party for students, a Roman dinner party. This was some years ago. They were younger than, it was like the 4th through 6th graders or something like that. I know, I'm sorry. Maybe I'll do it again. Maybe I'll think about it. But I bought some, they don't sell garum, but it was some sort of fish sauce. It was in the in the Asian section of the grocery store, And I thought, okay, this will be, oh guys, it just reeked. I mean, nobody could eat it. I opened it up and my whole kitchen just smelled, and I brought it out. And of course, a bunch of 4th through 6th graders are not going to eat something that smells like that, And so I'm like, you could sprinkle it and dip your bread in it. And everybody's like, no, thank you. So it sat in my kitchen for a year, and I thought, it was covered, And finally, I was going to dump it out. It was so gross, I didn't want to dump it down the sink because it smelled. I took it out in the field. I just dumped it out in the field. I don't know how. Anyway, it was not something I wanted to eat. But apparently there are people in the world today that eat a heavily fishy, sauce on their stuff, and they think it's awesome. Yes.
Have you tried it?
I don't remember.
Okay.
It was kind of hard to move it past your nose. Yes, Grace?
We have that in our fridge right now, and our dad loves it.
The fish sauce stuff?
Yeah.
Well, tell him he should be Roman. If he gets a time machine, he's going to fit right in. He's going to fit right in at a Roman dinner party. He's just going to douse it with the stuff. Yeah, Christian.
As you were saying, like people like with the malt vinegar.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Our sister with Italian seasoning.
Does she like Italian seasoning on everything?
Yeah.
Yes.
Not like a little bit, like a lot. Like 2 tablespoons.
Like she's eating a
Oh.
breakfast burrito, and she's like, this is Italian seasoning.
Oh,
She
my.
says whole jar, she's like,
Wow.
no, it's like a breakfast burrito with a side. It's like Italian seasoning with a side of breakfast burrito.
This has nothing to do with our class whatsoever, but I'm thinking of this. And it's interesting. You know what? Everything is interesting and educational, and everything's attached and connected to everything else. But after I say this, we do need to start talking about the 7 kings of Rome. Some years ago, I knew a girl who was adopted from China. She was 15. And she was she was about to turn 15, or she was about to turn 16. When they crossed that point, she wasn't adoptable anymore. She was too old. And so a family I knew went to China and asked if she was willing to come to America and live, and she said yes. Can you imagine having lived in another country and speaking another, she didn't speak any English. So anyway, she came, and I was at one of the first meals she had. She didn't really speak any English yet, but they had brownies. It was Subway sandwiches and brownies. And first of all, she wasn't quite sure what to do with the sandwich. Did you pick it up? Or do I fork? But then she ate a brownie, and I just remember this because I've been very open with you guys. I really like my sweets. This is a struggle for me because it's not healthy for me, but I like them. She took a bite of the brownie, and she didn't complain or anything, but she just sat down. She didn't eat anymore. Because in China, they don't really have sweets. You know, maybe fruit. It was just so incredibly sugary sweet, she couldn't eat it. And of course, I could eat 4 of them, you know what I mean, without blinking an eye. But see, that's not the way she grew up. And so everybody has different tastes and different things you grow up eating. And that really stuck with me that, wow, we just really like our sweets in America. But there are other countries where they don't really do sweets, you know. It does to me too, Kristen. Okay, does anybody have a question about the paper?
We totally went off topic.
We did. Are we good? Let's go and look at our reading questions now about the 7 kings of Rome, and then we can talk about the Aeneid. I am going to follow along. This was just a very long section, and I had a lot I wanted to talk about. Next week, by the way, in your reading, you're going to meet a lot of the most famous stories of early Rome. Very, very famous stories. We met a few of them today, too. By the way, Olivia, do your chapter numbers start over in this book? Like, was this chapter 4 and 5 for you, or was it now a chapter 1 and 2, or do you remember? I'll keep giving you the title. Is that working?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll just keep it that way. Okay. I just want to make sure everybody doesn't have a problem and they know what we're doing. Okay. So, 7 kings of, I need to give myself some room, and we're going to talk about these 7 kings. 7 hills of Rome, 7 kings of Rome. It's very easy to remember. King number 1. Who is king number 1? We met him last week. Romulus. What do we know about Romulus? What was he noted for? One of the things he's noted for?
Awesome.
Yeah.
Killing his brother.
And for killing his brother, which is not awesome at all. Yes. And becoming the first king of Rome. And building Rome, founding Rome.
Oh, yeah.
So all of the above. Wait a minute. What? I think I'm turned to the wrong chapter. Everybody be patient with me. Oh, here we go. So, before I ask the question, let me see what the problem was. Romulus builds Rome, kills his brother, he builds Rome, yay. And he needs some people to live in Rome. And does anybody remember, I didn't ask you, but does anybody remember what sort of people he invited to come live in Rome? Sabines, except not yet. Not yet. There was a certain class of people. It was fugitives. What is a fugitive?
People that are running from the law.
People that are running away. And in general, if you are running away, you've probably done something not good. You might be running away from danger. But in general, you're running away because you did something bad and they're after you. And so he said, hey, everybody who's been thrown out of your city, everybody who's on the run, you can live here. And so picture a city full of guys, generally guys, who are, sort of like the prison population, all right? Like in a movie. The guys who are currently in prison, it's a group of those guys, right?
Prison.
Murderers, but they're all guys. They're all guys. And we have a problem here because, any group of people with only guys or only girls is eventually going to disappear because you've got no kids. So how did they get their wives?
They said
They stole them like in 70s.
They stole them like in 7 Brides for 7 Brothers. They just stole them. So they said, hey, everybody in Italy. Hey, neighbors, Sabines, and all you neighboring tribes. We are going to have a big party in Rome. We're going to have a religious festival. Hey, come on, bring your wives, bring your daughters, bring the whole family, and we'll just have fun. And we'll have parades and food and everything. And so they do. And they're sitting there watching the parades and the sporting events and everything. And somebody gives the signal, and everybody just snatches a woman and runs off with her. What?
Men.
What? What? Yeah. And then their dads, brothers, husbands, but some were already married. They're complaining, obviously. They're also scared because they don't know, okay, what happens now? Are they going to kill us all? So they leave Rome to regroup. What are we going to do here to get our women back? You can't. A bunch of lowlife convicts have just stolen our women, and I don't know what to do about it. So eventually, they come and they try to attack. Okay? So, and this is the first famous story. Rome has a wall. And Rome also has steep hills, as we talked about. And so there was this outcropping, not quite like the Acropolis in Athens, but similar. And the Sabines were trying to get up there. And there was a girl, a Roman girl named Tarpeia. And she's watching the Sabines out, I don't know, the wall, from the top of the wall, a window, whatever. And ooh, the Sabines wear these pretty gold bracelets. I love their gold bracelets, says Tarpeia. Awesome. I want a gold bracelet. So she's outside the city walls getting water, whatever. And the Sabine army approaches her. Like, but would you help us get into the city? Will you come open the doors for us when we want to get in? She's like, totally. I totally will let you in if you will give me what you have on your left arms. They're like, done. So Tarpeia lets them in, and she says, hey, but give me what you got on your left arms. Well, they have gold bracelets, but they also have these enormous, heavy metal shields that they carry in their left arm. So yeah, here you go. And they just started pelting her with their shields. They just dropped their shields on top of them. They were heavy, and they buried her and crushed her to death under their shields.
That's what traitors deserve.
You know what? This is exactly what the ancient world thought. If you betray, whatever, a friend, your family, your city, your country, whatever, not only do the people you betray don't like you, but the people you betray them to think you're a rotter. They're not going to treat you well either because they think you're that sort. You would hand over your city? I give you no respect whatsoever. What did you say, Bryn?
We wouldn't want you on our team.
Yeah. Would you want the traitor to come live with you now? Because if they'll do it to their family or their city, they'll do it to you in the future. So we don't like that. So they crushed Tarpeia and clambered up the rock and got into the city. Now, in future times, the Romans remembered this story. And this rock that Tarpeia led them up to, they used to fling traitors off of. The Tarpeian Rock. They called it the Tarpeian Rock. That was the punishment for being a traitor in Rome. They will throw you to your death off the Tarpeian Rock. The Sabines get in and they start fighting. We want our wives and daughters back and everything. And their new husbands are fighting. Suddenly, unexpectedly, the Sabine women just run out in the middle of the two armies. Like, wait. Look, dad, brothers, whatever. These guys are our husbands now. Some of us have children. We love them. Don't hurt them. And guys, our new husbands, Roman husbands, don't hurt them. They're our family. Maybe we can all get along. And they stopped the war. Okay, okay. This sounds better than a bunch of us dying in battle. Let's shake and make nice, and they did. And they said, we have an idea. Why don't we have a Latin king, a Roman king, Romulus, and a Sabine king? 2 kings. They did it in Sparta. We could do that. So they did for a while. But eventually, the Sabine king got killed, murdered, for unknown reasons. And then Romulus just took over again being alone. He didn't really replace the Sabine king, which kind of irked the Sabines a little bit. But eventually, let me make sure I don't blow up the next question. Okay, I'm not going to. Eventually, after Romulus had ruled for many, many years, he went out into a field for some religious celebration with all the senators. We have senators. Does anybody know what senator means? It comes from a Latin word. We know what senators mean. It means the law-making people. But it comes from, senatus is actually the Latin word. It comes from the word senex, which means an old man. And that sounds old man. We would say the elders. All right? In other words, the older, wiser people who are better decision makers. So this group of people went out with Romulus, and suddenly there was thunder and lightning, and this big storm brewed up, and when it blew over, Romulus was just gone. He was gone.
Yay.
And they went back to the city, and the senators said, I think this gods just snatched up Romulus. And they got back, and some people said, here's what I think. I don't think the senators have ever liked Romulus very much. I think they killed him out there and hid his body. I don't think he was snatched up by the gods. I think it was a plot. So they were murmuring about this until a couple days later, this guy comes running into the city. He's breathless. You won't believe what happened. I was walking down the road towards Rome, and an apparition appeared to me, and it was Romulus. And he said, I am now a god. I'm Quirites, and you will worship me. You will put temples up to my honor because I am a god. No, the senators did not kill me. I have been snatched up to heaven. And he told me to tell all of you. Okay, well, that's the story. So a lot of people in Rome still thought, the senators paid that guy to come in here and say that. But that's the story. That's the story. This is something interesting about history. Sometimes we tell stories and we don't know whether they're true or not. Generally, if I say I'm teaching you history, don't you expect me to teach you things that really happened? I mean, that's how we use the word history. We don't call an argument between Hera and Aphrodite history, because we don't really think it happened. But the Persian War, we call it history because it really happened. But the problem is, how do we know what happened before we were born? Stories. And how do we find those stories? Where do those stories come to us? Okay, people wrote them down, or somebody tells you. Who are you most likely to trust about a story? Someone who heard it from someone else or someone who saw it?
Someone who saw it.
Could the person who saw it lie? Yeah. Could the person who saw it be mistaken? No, but sometimes we are mistaken. Like if I witnessed a battle, but I couldn't see, like there were trees in my way and I could only see one part of the battlefield. And I came back and I said, oh, they won a great victory at this battle. But then around on the other side of the trees, that side of the army, they were being defeated horribly, right? But I only saw part of it. And I didn't mean to tell you not accurately. I just didn't know. I didn't see it all. And so what happens then when people tell a story many, many times and maybe they change it a little bit. Or maybe people write it down, but what they wrote down gets lost, and we don't know anymore. You see, history's really hard. Because we weren't there, and even sometimes when you're there, you're not sure. Have you guys ever, sometimes there's a little game, a puzzle, in magazines or books, and they have you look at a picture, a drawing or a photograph, for a minute, 30 seconds or a minute, and then turn the page, and then you have to answer questions about it. How many cars were there? What was happening on the right-hand side? What was the guy in the middle wearing, and it's hard, even though you were looking at it, right? So if I witnessed an accident or a bank robbery or something, and the police came to me and said, well, what did he look like? What was he wearing? What did he sound like? I don't know if I would remember really well. And maybe other people who were there would remember it differently. You see? So that's what history is like. So the Romans believed these things. They really believed they happened. Did they all really happen? I don't know. It just so happens that Rome had a terrible fire, and they lost a lot of their early records. So the people who initially wrote these things down, see, we lost them. So our histories don't. The histories about this were written hundreds of years after it happened, because the original histories are lost. So we don't know. But the important thing is that's what they believed about themselves. And I've talked about this before. Y'all, I mentioned George Washington and the cherry tree, right? Right? We all know George Washington supposedly chopped down a cherry tree, and his dad said, who did it? He says, I cannot tell a lie. I did it with my little hatchet. Did this ever happen? I have no idea. But Americans, it certainly could have happened. But Americans believe the story because it tells us what kind of leaders we value. Just like Abraham Lincoln, Honest Abe, right? So, I don't know. You guys are old. If you guys were younger, I wouldn't say these things to you. But you're old enough to think about it now, about history. And there's one thing to say this really happened, and there's another thing to say this group of people believe this happened. And it changed who they were, right? They modeled themselves after the fact that they believe this happened. So all of these stories today, nobody knows. This is way, way back. This is 700 BC. I don't know. But they believed it. This is their history, the way they told it and the way they understood it. Okay, so Romulus is gone. We got to pick a new king number 2. And those Sabines said, look, we had the Sabine king, and then he died, and then you never replaced him. It's our turn. You guys should pick a Sabine king. And the Romans were like, well, we don't want a Sabine king. We want another Roman king. They're like, well, Sabine said, well, we're not going to be allied with you if you don't pick a Sabine king. So think about it. Finally, they pick a guy named Numa Pompilius. You don't have to write these names down, by the way. I'm just writing them down for our reference. And this is the next question I asked you. What was most important to the second king, Numa Pompilius? What was he all into, Christian?
Peace.
What? Peace and what's he gonna foster? What's he gonna build up to maintain peace? What?
Build up like the city and how it runs.
Yeah, there's a specific part of our lives that he was really concerned with. Piety, religion. He thought, if I can make people good, they'll be more peaceful. Remember what he's dealing with here, guys. A city full of convicts who've just stolen a bunch of women for their wives. This is what he's got to deal with. This is his raw material. Like, I need to teach them to revere the gods. And if I do, I think they will become more peaceful. I need to show them that peace is good. Fighting is useful sometimes, but peace is good too. He built a temple to Janus, that god with the 2 faces. The January god, right? The god that looks back to the past and forward to the future. And the thing about the temple of Janus was, it was a symbol of whether they were at war. If they closed the gates of the temple, it meant they were at peace. when they opened the gates, there was a war going on. And Numa closed doors. We're all at peace. We're not fighting with any of our neighbors. Rome only closed the doors 3 times in their whole history. I know, like 1,100 years, over 1,000 years, they only closed them 3 times. Numa closed them, and he thought, we are just going to foster peace. It says Numa has been called the founder of the Roman religion. He divided the year into 12 months so they could take readings from the stars and the planets. All right, but he eventually died. And by the way, I asked you, what are the 7 hills of Rome? We'll just hit that question real quick. They were all on a map here. Aventine, Caelian, Esquiline, Viminal, Quirinal, Palatine, Capitoline. Was that 7? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They were all, hopefully you all had the picture in your book. Okay, so next up, Numa Popilius had been a Sabine. Tullus Hostilius, the grandson of a Roman who had fought with great valor in the war against the Sabines, was now chosen king by the people. Here's a little problem with Rome. Rome, very warlike, full of fugitives. And Numa wants to calm them down and give them religion. But after a people get super, super calmed down, what might happen if someone wants you to attack you? You will lose because you haven't been training. You don't know how to fight. So it's shifted back again, right? Tullus Hostilius says, yeah, we're getting soft. We are getting soft and weak here, people. We can't always be going to the temples. We need to get out there and get some exercise and train with our weapons. So he says, convinced that the vigor of the state was being enfeebled through inaction, he looked around for a pretext of getting up a war. We need a war. That's what he said. We need a war. So he decides to fight Alba Longa. Alba Longa is that city that Aeneas's son had founded. And they'd always been allies, but here's what was going on. The Albans would creep over the borders, and steal stuff from the Romans. And then the Romans would creep over the border and steal stuff from the Albans, like animals, flocks, herds, cows, sheep, whatever, and just snatch them. And so they had this rivalry going, and Servius Tullius we're getting Tullus Hostilius said, we're getting our stuff back. So they're going to have a big battle. And suddenly somebody, stop. I have an idea. I have an idea that is going to stop us from killing a lot of innocent people who weren't snatching cows and things. It's a brilliant idea. Hey, you Albans, you've got 3 brothers, triplets. The Curiatii, the Curiatius brothers. We call them the Curiatii. Hey, it just so happens the Romans have a family with triplet brothers. The Horatius family, the Horatii. What if the 3 Horatii and the 3 Curiatii just come fight it out? And whoever wins, that side wins. And then if you Albans win, we'll obey you, and if the Romans win, you obey us. So they asked the Horatii and the Curiatii, will you do it? I'm like, yeah, sure, I guess. So they go out there and they're ready, right? And the army is just, puts down their weapons and they sit down on the sidelines and they're going to watch the show, right? Yeah. And it's a lot of pressure. Because the whole future of your city is resting on you, right? So they start fighting. And one Horatius brother dies. He's the Roman. You know what? I'll call him Roman and Alban. Okay. Okay. One Roman guy dies. They fight some more. Second Roman guy dies. The 3 Albans, the Curiatii, are left alive. The one Horatius Roman guy is left alive. But, and the crowd goes wild, right? Like, oh, and the Romans are scared. We're going to lose. You know, and the Alban Curiatii brothers, they're feeling pretty good about this. But the one Herodias Roman guy was smart. And he knew, first of all, these guys are wounded. The Curiatii, the Alban guys, are wounded. They can't really run and fight as well as they could. So the Roman guy takes off running, hoping that as they chase him, they will get spread apart. Because, you know, one of them who's not wounded so much, he goes faster. Then the Alban guy who's wounded a little more, he goes slower. And the other guy goes more slowly, right? So they're kind of limping along, you know, wounded in the leg, I'm trying to catch him. All right, so he spreads them out, and then the Horatius Roman guy just turns around and he just kills the first one right in front of him. And then he runs a little more and he waits for the second one and he kills the second one, and now it's 1-1. But Horatius, the Roman guy, isn't wounded. The last Alban guy is. And the historian that tells us the story said another thing. The Horatius Roman guy was all worked up because he had just seen his two brothers killed. So did the other guy. And he turns and kills the third one. Yeah, and the crowd cheers. The Romans have won, and Alba Longa will be subject to Rome. In fact, they deported their population and they brought them into Rome. And they just tore down Alba Longa. Now, this is a lovely story, but unfortunately it's not the end of the story. It's terrible, terrible. You remember what happens next, Christian? Tell me what happens next.
I don't want to.
Okay, you want me to tell me? I'll tell it, okay. So, and Horatius comes back. He's the hero of Rome. Yay, yay. And he's carrying the spoils of victory. You know, when you killed someone, you just went and took their stuff. If they had awesome stuff, right? You take their weapons. Oh, I like the look of that, you know, dagger. And if they have a lovely cape or whatever, you just strip the bodies. You strip the bodies. And he stripped the body, and he's coming in, and he's carrying this cape from one of the Alban Curiatius brothers over his arm. And he's walking into Rome, and his sister is there. Guys, unfortunately, his sister was engaged to be married to one of the Curiatius brothers, who's just been killed. And she sees her brother coming in with the cape she made for her fiance. I made that, and you just killed him. And she starts crying. My boyfriend has been killed by my brother. And the Horatius brother looks at her. I just saved Rome, seriously, and you're going to cry about it? And he just went over and killed her. He just stabbed his sister right there. These Romans did not mess around, I'm telling you. And so you will be glad to know that everybody didn't go, yeah, you go. They grabbed him and said, what the heck? You can't just kill your sister. We're detaining you under arrest, and we are going to sentence you to terrible punishments, and you're going to be tortured and killed. And the dad of the murdered girl and the brother stands up and says, okay, guys, here's the thing. If he hadn't done it, I would have done it myself. She deserved to die because are you actually going to let people mourning for the enemy? Are you going to aid and abet people mourning for the enemy in our town? Not to mention, are you actually going to execute my son? What? Are you going to take him out to that field there where he just killed those guys and saved Rome?
Yes.
Oh, are you going to take him over here where the pile of treasure and booty from the enemy is piled? You're going to kill him there? Huh? And they let him off. They let him go because of his dad's impassioned pleas. They did not punish the Horatius brother who had just saved Rome from being subject to Alba, but had also just murdered his sister because his sister cried for her boyfriend. Oh my gosh. A fiance, yes, they were engaged. Wow. This is, are we getting a vibe here? Romulus kills his brother, and then we're going to steal a bunch of women, and then we're we're going to just kill her sister because she cried over the enemy. And wow, that's Roman history.
When in Rome.
Wow. Okay, so that's Tullus Hostilius. He wanted to shake things up and get a war going so we wouldn't become soft. And it worked. Okay, so moving on. After the death of Tullus, the people chose Ancus Marcius, the grandson of Numa, as their next king. What would you expect him to be like? If peaceful, you would expect that. It says, this is what Dorothy Mills puts it. Ancus believed that peace had been the great need for Rome in the days of Numa. But he saw that it would not be possible to preserve that peace unbroken in his own time. He set out with an army and defeated his enemies and took their city. So we would think that he would be all about peace. But he said, well, that was okay in Grandpa's time, but we have a lot of enemies around us. And if we just spend all our time worshiping, we're going to get taken over. We're going to have to fight for our place here. So he did. He expanded Rome. He took over the port city, because remember Rome, I didn't bring my map, here's Italy. Rome this is the Tiber River. Rome is a little upriver. It's not on, this is the water, okay. It's not on the ocean. And they had a port city here called Ostia. Ostia means the mouth, the doorway or the mouth. It's sort of the doorway to the river. So he took over that, so now they have a port. He took over some more of the hills, those 7 hills, and he expanded Rome. And that's about all there is to say about him. Okay, during the reign of Ancus, a guy came to Rome, Tarquinius Priscus, Lucius Tarquinius Priscus. He wasn't Roman. He wasn't Sabine. He was Etruscan. He was Etruscan. And he came to Rome with his wife. And that wasn't even his name. I don't remember what his name was, but he changed it to make himself sound Roman. And things weren't going very well at home for Lucius Tarquinius Priscus and his wife. Business was put down, business was poor. There just wasn't any advancement for him. And his wife said, Rome is a place where a person with talent and ability can rise to the top. Let's just relocate. Let's just become Roman. And who knows? Who knows? The sky's the limit. Who knows what you might become? So they were traveling to Rome, and they were in a cart, a horse-drawn cart. And suddenly this bird comes and snatches the hat right off Tarquin's head and flies around and puts it back on his head, which is odd. And his wife said, his wife was really good at reading bird signs. She's Etruscan. Remember, they got the augury, reading birds from the Etruscans. She's an Etruscan lady. It's like, this is good. It means you're going to be very important in Rome. Like the gods have favored you, and they're going to make you the head of something. So he goes, he wiggles his way into Ancus Marcius's good graces and becomes the tutor to the king's sons. Okay? Now, let's leave him there. Actually, do we want to leave him there? No, we don't want to leave him there yet. Eventually, I got to tell you this part. Eventually, Ancus Marcius died. And he had 2 sons. Who usually gets to be king next? Often the son gets to be king. Guess who wants to be king? So he said, on the day when we elect, because it wasn't automatic in Rome, they elected. But if you liked the dad, chances are the kid would get elected. That makes sense. But on the day of the election, Tarquin, it wasn't the day of the election. It was just a day. Tarquin said to the sons, when do you go out on that hunting expedition you've been wanting to do? Why don't you go take a little vacation? And they left, and then Tarquin ran around the city, what we would say campaigning, right? Shaking hands. It's like, oh, I'm concerned about Rome. I'm concerned about the government. I think I could do some good things. He's making campaign promises. And he says, well, let's just have the election now. They hold the election while the sons are gone, and they elect Tarquin in the absence of Ancus Marcius' sons. So how do you think they feel when they show back up? What just happened? You got rid of us, got us out of the city so you could run around and talk to people and get yourself elected king, didn't you? Yeah, you did. You did. So keep in mind, this guy's, here, let's keep track of this. This guy's sons, the two sons, are very unhappy. Yes. Now, this is the next question I asked you. What strange event marked the young Servius Tullius as someone with a great future? Say it, Grace. Yeah. There's a slave boy in Tarquin's household, and he's taking a nap one day, and there's just his head's on fire. There's just a fire on his head.
I love how casually you say that.
It's just, I hate it when that happens, when your head's on fire. There's just fire inside. Actually, just a second, let me look at something. Does anybody remember someone else who had flames on their head from the Aeneid? Aeneas' son had a flame on his head as an omen. This was the thing, apparently. And so they were going to douse it with water. It wasn't real fire, though. I mean, it wasn't hurting him. It wasn't burning him. And his wife, Tanaquil, said, no, don't do it. Don't do it. Let's see what happens. And it just went out, and the boy woke up, and he was just, oh, why is everybody here? And she said to her husband, look, we gotta take good care of that kid. He is destined for greatness. That was an omen. We need to, cultivate him and take good care of him, because someday we're going to need him. We're going to want him. So he was raised in their household. The sons of Ancus, remember the unhappy sons, formed a plot and hired 2 shepherds to assassinate the king. They hired 2 guys to pretend they were having a fight and, be pushing and shoving each other. You shut up. No, you shut up. And they bring them in front of the king, and the king's like, okay, what's the deal? You go first. No, you go first. No, you shut up. And while they're distracted, one of them grabs a dagger, and they just kill. Ancus Marcius. They kill, killed Tarquinius Priscus. I'm sorry. They killed Tarquinius Priscus because they're so upset.
So how many people have been murdered?
Oh, a lot at this point. And so, he's wounded, but he's not dead. And his wife, Tanaquil, takes him, puts him in the bedroom, puts a guard over the bedroom, and shuts the door. And she brings in Servius Tullius. We're going to write him down because he's the next king, right? Servius Tullius. And she says, look. Ever since you were a little boy and the whole fire on the head incident, you have been destined for greatness. You need to help me now. If the people find out that Tarquin is dead, who knows who they're going to choose king? We can lose power. We're going to pretend he's still alive. Let's just tell everybody he's wounded and he's recovering. And in the meantime, you go out there and you start giving orders. But you say, oh, the king wants us to do this. The king said he wants that. And after a while, the people will get used to you giving orders. And then we'll announce that the king has died and you're a shoo-in. You will automatically be the next king. That's exactly what they did. They pretended that Tarquin was alive for a while. And Servius Tullius just brought messages from him. But there were no messages. The guy was dead. They just didn't make it public. Yeah, from the queen. Okay, so Servius Tullius. Okay, listen to this, because the plot thickens. You think this is crazy? We haven't even got there yet. Servius gained a firm hold on the kingdom. he had 2 daughters who had married the 2 young Tarquins, the sons of Tarquinius Priscus. What?
Are those 2 sons young?
No, I mean old enough to get married. I mean, he had been king for a good long time. So he had 2 sons. He had 2 daughters. How convenient. But again, who might these sons think should be the next king? One of them. Except one of them wasn't the next king. It was some low-life slave kid. I am not very happy. But Servius says, okay, we'll calm them down. They can marry my daughters, and then when I'm gone, they can take over. It'll be good. It'll be fine. And so, oh my goodness. Okay, we have husband and wife number 1 and husband and wife number 2, okay? Husband number 1 is very mean. But husband number 2 is super nice, or wife number 2. Wife number 2 is super mean. And husband is super nice.
That's good.
Okay? Well, you would think so, except that mean and mean started hanging out with each other.
Oh.
And we probably see what comes next. They decided to get rid of the nice and nice and join forces and then take over. Which is yeah, they mysteriously died. And so they decide to band together and take out Servius Tullius and put him, and he is known as Tarquinius Superbus. Remember, he's his son, Tarquinius Superbus. It is. This is why I'm writing it, because it's almost too hard to remember. So, Servius Tullius is I don't know, at home, whatever, and Tarquin, mean Tarquin, okay, nasty one, because the good one is dead, comes and he just marches right into like the throne room area, and he sits down on the throne. Hey, how you doing? I'm king. And somebody goes and gets Servius Tullius. He says, your son-in-law Tarquin is sitting on your throne and he's giving orders to people. And Servius Tullius comes in, comes running in, and he says, what is going on here? And Tarquin says, I'll tell you what's going on here. You're not going to be king anymore. I'm going to be king, along with your daughter, and you can just hit the road. And they threw him down the stairs. They just chucked him out the front door, threw him down the stairs, injuring him gravely. Oh, guys, I have to tell you. Then his wife, Servius's daughter, has her chariot driver run over him. I am not kidding. She just tells him, hey, run over my dad. He's kind of limping back home because he's injured. He's like, run him down. Just run him down. And the chariot driver says, are you serious? Yes. If you want to keep your job, run him over. They kill him, his own daughter. And do you remember last week I showed you that sarcophagus with the Etruscan lady? And I said Etruscan ladies were known for being, remember this is an Etruscan family here. His wife was Etruscan, and so he takes over. And that's the circumstances. Now, the last question I asked you is, why did Rome finally get rid of their kings? What happened that was the last straw after this, and they said, we're done. We don't do kings anymore.
After the last
Yeah.
king.
Well, what did he do?
He was bad.
He was bad. He attacked someone, did he not?
Yeah.
Who did he attack? Was it a man or a woman?
He basically attacked him.
No? No? That's not what the story is. I will tell you, these are the foundational stories of Rome, which is disturbing.
Okay.
But this is important to know. This is super famous, and it's going to come back later. Here's the story. Once upon a time, King Tarquin and a guy named Brutus and a guy named Collatinus, which was a relative of Brutus, are sitting around in an army camp. And they're killing time, and they start discussing whose wife was better. You want
The story.
would you like to tell it, Emma? Don't read the whole thing, but can you paraphrase it? Probably just mostly because we don't have time. Or
I know only a fraction of
Okay.
the story. Why don't you lead?
do you mind if I? Okay. And so they're arguing about it. And Collatinus says, "No, my wife Lucretia, she's awesome." And so they're arguing, and one of them says, "You know, it's only a couple of miles to Rome. Let's just go back to Rome, and we'll see what each of the women is doing, and we'll vote who's the best wife." So they go and they visit each of the wives, and they find Lucretia there, and she's just beautiful. She's so beautiful, but she's very busy and industrious, and she's got all her maid servants spinning and, cooking and everything. Her household is so well run, and they're all like, "Okay, you win. You win, Collatinus. Your wife, Lucretia, is the best." They go back to the army camp. But Tarquin has developed a crush on Lucretia. A burning crush. He goes back to pay her a visit. And he's like, "Oh, I'm going to spend the night." And he attacks her in the night. He assaults her in the night.
Oh, wrong story.
Okay. He
Before that.
okay. He attacks her and slips back. And she is mortified. She didn't really do anything wrong. He had a knife. There's nothing. He's like, "I will slit your throat if you yell." So she gets up and things are very bad. So she sends to the camp. She sends for her husband and her dad and her husband's cousin Brutus. And she says, "Something terrible has happened. I need you to come home ASAP." And they do. She sits them down. She's crying. And they're, what is it? "I got to tell you what happened." So she tells them, and they're like, "You didn't do anything wrong." It's like, "I am not going to live to give Roman women the idea that they can just be unfaithful to their husbands in any way." And she said, "You must avenge this." And then she just grabs a dagger and she stabs herself, and she falls dead on the floor. She just kills herself right in front of him. And Brutus and her husband Collatinus are down, like, "Oh my gosh." Well, here's the thing about Brutus. Brutus, and this might have been also what you were thinking about. Brutus, okay, brute, right? If we say someone's a brute, I mean, like, they're not very smart, they're kind of animal-y. Brutus, he had a manner about him that made people think he wasn't very bright. And so everybody thought he was a little dense, maybe a little slow, and they just kind of ignored him, right? But he wasn't. He just didn't. Okay, when all of this stuff is going on, you don't want to draw attention to yourself, right? So if everybody just thinks I'm not real bright and I'm not a threat, they'll leave me alone. He kind of put on that persona. And at this point, he throws it off. He says, "Okay, you do this, you do that." He starts giving orders, like, "We need to mobilize an army. We are getting rid of Tarquin. This is intolerable, and we are not suffering under this anymore." And everybody's like, "Brutus, what has happened to you? I thought you weren't very bright. I thought you were a little dense." And it was an act. Goes out, drives Tarquin, hit the road. "You grab your stuff and be thankful that we're letting you grab whatever you can carry, and you get out, and you are not welcome here anymore. We don't do kings anymore." So you might say, "Well, what do they do?" That's what we're going to read about next week. We're going to read about the government that they put into place. Let me just remind myself where you stopped, what was happening when you stopped. Oh, we did read about it because we read in chapter 5. They decided to elect 2 consuls, not councils. Consul, like a president, except there were 2 of them, and you only have a 1-year term. And the consuls work with the Senate, and they rule and they pass laws. That is the Roman system. We had Did you guys have a picture? I talked about the Foscase last week, the Etruscan, the rods and the axes that they would carry. They adopted that system, and they would carry them in front of the consuls. The guys named lictors were the guys who carried those. And Rome was basically at this point divided into two groups of people. There were the old families, the families who were there at the beginning, probably the descendants of those fugitives, right? And they were called the patricians. Pater means father. So the patricians are like the fathers of Rome. Everybody else was a plebeian. You came later. You don't have a long-standing noble family. And the patricians were, like, we're awesome, we're in charge. And the plebeians were the people they bossed around. Kind of. This is going to cause problems later in Rome. But Brutus stepped up, and he became one of the two first consuls. Now, I told you to remember, because some of you, I saw a couple of faces. You guys with me? When I said the word Brutus, there's another Brutus in history. We're going to meet him in, I don't know, 6 weeks or so. Remember this Brutus. The Brutus who drove the dirty, rotten scoundrel king out of Rome and said, we don't do kings anymore. Okay? For next time, I want you guys to read in the Dorothy Mills book, chapter 6, parts 1 through 3. Chapter 6 is long. We're not reading the whole thing. And it's called How Rome Conquered Italy. That's the name of the chapter. But we're only reading parts 1 through 3, okay? And we will read some more very, very famous stories. But like I said, you probably got the vibe of what these people are like. What is important to Rome? They are tough as nails. But they are not afraid to take out anybody who gets in their way. Not afraid at all. Yeah, Bryn. I want you to read for the Aeneid. I want you to read chapters 6 through 10. And we're going to spend the rest of our time talking about that reading. Aeneid, chapters 6 through 10. I brought a picture. Yes.
What if we brought the questions that were optional?
The summaries.
Or
If you have those, I will take them. But if you don't, it's fine. I don't mind. I meant.
I only did 4.
Oh, it's fine. It's fine. I didn't expect you to do any because it was my mess up. I was going to ask everybody to write a couple of sentences summary of each chapter, and then I forgot to tell you, and that is it. So maybe we'll do that in a future book. You don't? So let me publicly, since we started not doing them, you don't have to do any more unless you just want to, okay? For the ones that did it, it's okay. We're taking that assignment off the table because I messed up, okay? But I will read these and give them back to you. I'll be delighted to. So let's talk a little bit about Aeneas and his travels. Let me find, I actually made a summary for myself so I could know what parts we read. So far, how is the trip going for Aeneas to found a new home?
Absolutely awesome.
Really?
It's up and down.
Really, it's up and down. He keeps thinking he found a good place, and then it turns out not to be a good place, right? First of all, he wakes up in the middle of the night, and his city's on fire. That's never good. That's not a good sign. And it becomes very obvious that Troy is going down. So famously, this is kind of a weird-looking picture, but I brought this in. This is a painting from 1615. This is Aeneas. And the famous thing he did was he led his little son, sometimes they call him Iulus, sometimes they call him Ascanius, same kid, by the hand, and he carried his father. His father is too old to keep up with them. So he hoists his father on his shoulders. And these things that look like dolls, or babies or something, they're the household gods. They're the penates, the Lares and penates, the household gods. They bring their gods. He brings his dad, carries his dad, and he leads his son by the hand. Here I will. This painting is in the Louvre in Paris. And you might think, well, what's the big deal? So he got his family out of Troy. Good for him. What's the deal? But it's sort of symbolic if you think about it. What if your dad could be a symbol of something, not just himself, but a symbol of something, and your son could be a symbol of the opposite thing? What could they be symbols of? What does your dad represent? Well, this is kind of a weird question I'm asking you. So, what? Oh, the old. In other words, the ancestors. Like your dad and your grandpa and your great-grandpa. All the past. All the past. Like the past history of Aeneas, the past history of Troy, all the past. Your dad is sort of like the past. Does that make sense? Kind of.
The social studies teacher.
Okay, yeah, no, that's very convenient. But he's also older than you, and so he's also presumably, yeah. And then if that were the case, what would your son be? If your dad is the past, what would your son be? Future. And so a lot of people have looked at this story and they said, this is so cool. Aeneas brings the past with him. All Troy and the Trojan War and his history. He brings it, he's carrying it, right? But he's also got the future. He's leading his little son by the hand. He's not going to be Trojan anymore, he's going to be Roman. But they're going to bring with them people from Troy. They're going to bring with them the history of Troy. So he heads out, and as Christian hopefully was jokingly saying it was going awesome, it was not going awesome. They stop at one place, and the ground bleeds because, I don't think your retelling actually told you that part. During the war, King Priam had sent his youngest son to a neighbor for safekeeping with a bunch of treasure, and the neighbor decided to kill him and take the treasure and fling him into the ocean. But his body washed ashore, and it just kind of lodged in the ground and got covered over. And anyway, Aeneas comes. He's like, yeah, let's start digging in the ground and building a city. And it's like, oh. And he hears the voice of this boy saying, do not build a city on my body. I have been treacherously killed. So they leave. They try going to Delos, the island of Delos, where Apollo is. And Apollo says, seek the home of your fathers. Thanks, Apollo. We don't know where that is. And his dad says, I think it's Crete. Let's go to Crete. Hey, let's start building cities. Oh, Apollo says, no, not here. You have to go to Italy. You have to go to Italy. So they're heading to Italy, right? And they stop in Sicily and find the weirdest thing. Hector's widow Andromache is living there with one of Hector's brothers that she's married. They were given away as slaves, and then they found each other and they got freed from slavery, and they've built a little Troy. Oh, let me see if I can find that section. Which chapter is it? It's so cute. It's so cute. This was in chapter 5.
When? Where?
Except the chapters don't have numbers, do they? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, just a second.
On the voyage of Aeneas.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you. Yes.
I don't know what page number.
I
It's all
don't.
different.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'll just read the section, but
Speaking of that,
I can't find it.
going back to the Book of Ancient Rome,
Yes.
I have a question.
Yes, please.
I don't know if our books are different. I don't think they are. But I can't find a diagram on page 47 of the Seven Hills of Rome.
Oh.
I have to look it up.
Oh, okay. You know what? I've run into this before, Emma. There are about 3 different editions of this book, and some of them have illustrations that others don't have. Once I found a whole paragraph that was missing. I asked questions. It was this year too. I asked questions about a section, and then nobody could find it that year. And I got my book and I got their book, and that paragraph was just gone. So if that ever happens, I mean, try to find the answers, but if you just can't find it, it's probably because your edition is different.
This is the one I have.
Yeah, it's a newer one because it's Memoria Press, but I noticed that the new Memoria Presses are not like my old Memoria Press. I think that's Olivia's issue too. Okay, let me see if I can find this. Okay, here we go.
On page?
Whoa. Andromache answered, "Truly there was but one among the daughters and the daughters-in-law of Priam that was happy, she whom the Greeks slew at the tomb of Achilles. As for me, who once had Hector for a husband, I was carried across the sea as a slave is carried. A slave I was, though they called me a wife. And when Pyrrhus wished to marry the daughter of Helen, then he gave me to Helenus, as one slave is given to another. But Pyrrhus was slain by Orestes, who loved the daughter of Helen. And when he was dead, his kingdom was divided, and part of it came to Helenus, this country where we now are." This is the part I really wanted to hit. "He has built a town and called it Pergamus." And he went, great, he called it Pergamus. That's what they called Troy. It's another name for Troy. Mm-hmm. He built a town and called it Troy. And the river he has called Simois, because the Simois River ran right by Troy. In other words, it's kind of like if we all got evicted from our homes and we ran away and we found a new home in, I don't know, Antarctica. And there was, except there's no rivers in Antarctica, but we're going to pretend there is. And we built a city, and you said, let us call this river the Mississippi. And let us call our town Davenport and Bettendorf. And let us call, and let us call, whatever, that island, Arsenal Island. They named everything in their new home after Troy.
Where are we?
What? Yeah. But guys, why would they do that? Why would they do that?
Feel like it's home.
To feel like it's home, because they're sad. But, hey, remember, I've got the past and the future. What do they only have?
The past and future.
Except what are they dwelling on? The past. The past.
Right.
Do you see what I mean? If you moved somewhere, but you named everything after your old home, think about it, guys. Are you ever going to be able to move on from the pain? No. See, that's the thing. That's the core of the adult, the mature thing that's going on here. If you name, so for example, this will hit you home, and it's fine if you've done this, but I don't think you would. Say you have a dog or a cat, beloved, and it dies, and then you get another one and name it the same name.
That'll name it, then it'll remind you of the other one.
See, then it will remind you, but it will also, it will be happy because you get to call the same name. Come here, whatever.
Curry.
Yeah, Fido. But you'll always be remembering the dog you lost. You'll always be comparing this dog to the dog you lost, right? But if you name it something new, it's like, well, I really loved, Rex. Rex was wonderful, but now this is Fido, and he's wonderful too in his own way, right? But Andromache and Helenus, they don't do that. Like, we're going to name it Troy, or we're going to name the river after the river, or we're going to name every part of this place, every part of Troy. They can't move on. But Aeneas can't do that. Apollo said, the god said, you got to build a new place. It's new. You're going to revive the people of Troy, but you're not going to call it Troy. Okay, so when we left off, your reading, they were trying to get to Italy, and I didn't bring my map, but do you remember that the toe of Italy comes down, like that, and then there's an island here, right? And there's just a very skinny strait, a very skinny place to sail through. And Helenus said, that's Scylla and Charybdis. We met this in the Odyssey. On one side is a horrible whirlpool that sucks you down. And on the other side is this lady, I'm not even going to try to draw her, and she Okay, it's just like here's a mouth with lots of teeth. She has multiple heads, and she reaches out of her cave and she eats sailors. You have to sail through there. And when they do, they land. Unclear if it's on Sicily or another island. And this guy comes running to them. He's like, "Oh, crud! You're Trojans, but I don't care. I'm Greek. I don't care. Kill me now. I don't care because my friends and Odysseus, Ulysses, left me here with the Cyclops. They were so in a hurry to leave the Cyclops, they just left me here by accident. And I have been living, like in trees and hiding, trying not to get eaten. Will you please either just kill me if you hate me because I'm Greek, or just let me come on your ship?" They're like, "Dude, come on our ship. It's fine. Don't get eaten by the Cyclops." I feel like Ulysses wouldn't have done that. Odysseus wouldn't have said, "Hey, you Trojan guy, just come on board. We'll take care of you." And they did. They welcomed him on. That's where we left off. He still hasn't found Italy. He still hasn't found a home. So you read chapters 6 through 10 and find out if he finally ever gets to Italy and finds a home. Presumably he will, because he's going to be the...
It's like Cataphragmastes, but Trojan.
Yes. All right, so write me 2 paragraphs about Roman dining. Read parts 1 through 3 of this chapter of Dorothy Mills and the Aeneid, chapters 6 through 10. And I will see you next week. Oh, and I didn't read my poems.